Hello. Alright, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to make a neck ruffle. So, I was looking through some of my patterns and I came across this, and this is fine, I guess, but if you don't really know anything about pattern making or sewing, this really isn't that helpful because it's like, okay, so this shape becomes this shape, but there's a lot of stuff like sewing and little things you need to know to achieve this result, more than just understanding the shape of the pattern. So I'm going to try and show you how to do something like this. And even more than that, this is going to be about pleats and how I like to make pleated details like this, or just anywhere. It's an example of how I like to do pleated effects in clothes. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. Now, before I get started, I do want to mention that there are pleating tools in Marvelous Designer and Clo3d. I'm not going to be using the pleating tools, the automatic pleating tools that they have. And it's not because they're bad tools. They're a little bit difficult for me to kind of understand. So up here in Clo3d, you've got this tool, and it's just called the pleats tool. And what you can do is you can select an internal line or just drag out a line. And then you select the line and select the side to pleat. And then you get this dialog box. And it's all numerical values, and you have the depth of the pleat and the interval of the pleat. And you can make more than one. And then you can unlink some of these, and it's just, there's a lot of internal lines happening and things are getting spread out. And sometimes things don't work. I just find it a little bit difficult to use. Now, if you can figure this out, this actually is a really powerful tool right here. But for me, it's just a little too complicated for what I want. And especially if you're in like the 3D modeling stuff and you just don't have any knowledge of sewing, this can be pretty overwhelming. So I'm going to show you the way I like to do it, which is it's going to take a little bit longer in terms of the process, but I think it sets things up more easily, and you can get the result that you want a little bit more in a way that's more easy to understand. So I just want to mention that there are these tools available, and maybe you can get figure them out a little bit better than I did. So all right, so what I've got here is just a basic kind of button down shirt. And what I want to do is I want to put this ruffle kind of up under the collar here. So I'm going to set that up right now, just because it's easy. So what I did is I just dragged out this kind of like piece that's going to go around the neck. And what I want to do is I want to stick it underneath this collar. Now, this seems like it's kind of tricky to do and not fun, but it's actually really easy. And this is one of my favorite tricks to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw an internal line right in half like that. So right down the middle there. And then on this under collar piece, whatever that's called, I'm going to create another internal line here. So I'm just going to drag out an internal line and give it kind of the same curvature as the collar underneath. Now all I need to do is I need to sew this internal line, middle internal line here to this here. And it doesn't matter that they don't match or anything like that. I actually don't want this undercollar piece to be a little bit smaller so it'll cinch up on the neck. So the reason we sewed that to it, and the only reason we sewed it to this underpiece, is so that we can superimpose it right on top. So you just go over here and you superimpose over. And then that undercollar piece goes right onto the collar. It superimposes right on. And then I'm just going to copy and symmetrically paste that. And then again, superimpose over. And that puts it right where it needs to be. And you can use this trick on all kinds of things like belts or just anything that needs to be wrapped around. Just draw an internal line, and it doesn't even have to match up. Like from side to side, if you're doing an internal line like this from here to here, it doesn't even have to match up perfectly, and you can still superimpose, and it'll kind of just superimpose in that general correct place. It's a really powerful thing to get pieces where you want them. Anyway, that's not what this video is about. So you just superimpose over, and then I'm going to sew the front to the, or the back to the back and the front to the front. And then I'm going to simulate this. Okay. And since everything is already sewn into place, everything stays right where it should, and this collar tightens up real nice. And then once you're done, you just delete the internal line, which also deletes the sewing. And you've got your collar, or you've got this piece underneath your collar quickly and easily. So that's how we do that. Okay, so this is gonna be the piece that the kind of ruffle connects to. So now what I want to do is I actually want to deactivate this collar piece. Now, I never work on top, almost never. I almost never work on top of frozen garments. I will almost always deactivate them, and so they're just not there. So I don't have to worry about collision issues, because again, when you deactivate something like this, it acts as though it's not even there. So I'm going to deactivate these and then hide them. So they're still there, they're just deactivated and hidden. And then I'm going to, I'm just gonna deactivate everything except for this piece here. So I will select inverse and deactivate and hide all of this. And then I'm actually, I'm gonna deactivate this piece as well, but I'm not gonna hide it. So I want this to be deactivated. So essentially this is just frozen in place because I'm gonna be sewing things to it. Right. So now I've got everything set up the way we need to. All right. Now that we've got everything set up, let's go ahead and look at our pattern again. Now, when we look at the pattern here, I'm actually going to completely ignore this shape over here. That's really not important. What you want to focus on is this shape here. And it's this diamond kind of triangle shape of the actual bow. And the reason this is, you want to focus on this and not this pattern piece here. This pattern piece, these little angles and pleats, well, not the pleats, but the angle and shape of this it's actually dependent on what it is attached to. So the curvature of this piece here on the neck, that's going to determine a lot of the angles in here and the shaping of this. So you don't really want to think of this pattern shape as creating this effect. What you want to think of is this effect determines the shape of the pattern. Now that's a little confusing to think about right now, but I'll try and show you what I mean by that. So again, we're going to ignore this pattern piece and we're just going to focus on the shape of this ruffle. So let's go back over here. Now what I want to do is just create that kind of triangle diamond shaped thing and attach it to my neck here. And one important note, do keep this neck piece deactivated pretty much until the very end. You don't ever want to activate this because it's in the right position, and if you activate it, it'll just don't. So anyway, let's go ahead and just kind of create the diamond shape that we want our ruffles to be in. So I'll copy and symmetrically paste that, and now we can sew this piece to there. Now, in your 2D window, when you look at this, you say, okay, this is a flat piece here, this is flat here, this is fine. But it's actually not, because I cover this in my pattern making for 3D artists, which if you haven't watched that one, you should definitely watch, but we're not connecting a straight piece to a straight piece. If we look in the 3D window here, let's go ahead and look at this. This neck piece, the way it's being connected is actually curved. So even though it's straight in the 2D window, in the 3D window, it's curved. And so we need to we need to create a curve on the edge here to kind of match the curvature in here. And it doesn't need to be super precise, but if we just sew this on like this, you're gonna get a lot of kind of puckering, and it won't fit well, as you can see. So what we need to do, again, it's kind of match the curvature right in here. So I'll just add a bit of curvature. Then adjust your sewing line length because that becomes uneven. Sew it. Okay, so that's pretty close. And again, it doesn't need to be too precise. And I think I'll just pull this out and sew that closed. All right, so now that sits much more nicely and flatter. Right. Okay, so now we have this. Hang on. Right. So we've got this basic shape of the kind of ruffle that we want. Now, before we move on, let me talk about kind of what pleats are, the technical explanation of what a pleat is. And fortunately, it's really, really simple. A pleat, at its most base, kind of fundamental level, is just 3 layers of fabric. So you've got a layer of fabric here, layer of fabric behind it, and a third layer of fabric behind that. And then they're connected up from edge to edge and edge to edge, which creates a Z shape. That's it. That's what a pleat is. So let's go back to our reference here and look at this. So if we just look at this area here, like this, you've got 1 layer of fabric here, you've got another layer of fabric here, and another layer of fabric here. That's just the 3 layers of fabric. So theoretically, all we need to do is just make this shape and then make 2 more of those shapes, stack them on top, sew them up, merge them, and you've got the pleat. And it's not just theoretical, that's actually what we're going to be doing. That's all there is to making a pleat like this. Because we know it's just 3 layers of fabric stacked, so just stack 3 layers of fabric and merge them in the correct order, and you're going to end up with this. So that seems almost too simple, but let me show you how it works, because there are some like little technical things you're going to need to do when you're doing something like this. But at its core, at its base level, that's all we're doing here. So I want to just create the shape of the pleat. So let's again check the reference really quick. So I just want to create a shape like this and like this and like this, and so it comes back up. So let's just do that. So I'll make an internal line here. I'll turn my internal line so we can see them. And then I'll make another internal line fairly close because I want these to be tight pleats up at the top, and then it'll spread out. And you know what, let's move this over even a bit more, like that. All right, so that's the shape of our first pleat. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab both of these internal lines here. I'm going to right click on them and extend, trim, and add point. So that's going to push the internal lines out to the edge, and it's going to add segment points at the edges. So do pattern outline. And so now there are segment points right here, and it's divided the lines up like this. So what we're going to do now is just grab all of these edges. So you just take all of those edges like that, and we'll go up to the trace tool, and you can right click and trace as a pattern. And that's going to create a new pattern piece in the shape of all those internal lines like that. So that's our first layer. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my segment sewing to sew it on and sew it on like this. And the reason I'm sewing it on is so that I can right click on this and superimpose over. And then that's going to position that piece right on top. And then we need 1 more piece on top. So this time I'm just going to layer clone over. And I don't want this to be instanced, so I'm going to remove the linked editing so that that little green outline goes away. And then I'm going to delete this sewing on top because I don't want this type of sewing. I want my own custom sewing. So just delete that sewing. And now we can actually delete the sewing on this second one too. So I want no sewing on any of them. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut this internal line right here. So we're going to cut this right here. And I don't want to cut and sew it. I just want a regular cut. So just cut like that. All right, and now we have everything set up to create our pleat. So the way pleats work is it creates a Z shape. So this is a little bit tricky, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy. this top layer of fabric connects over here. So I want to sew from here down to this piece down here, which is actually the top piece. But so it sews to there. And then on this outside edge, we're gonna sew from here to here. So let me open these up so we can actually see how this is sewing. Right. So this middle piece, okay, and then this middle piece sews to this piece right in here. And so it goes from there to there to there to there. And that creates a pleat. So let's go ahead and simulate this. And I'm not even going to worry about the other side right now. Just don't even worry about that. I'm actually just going to delete that because we'll just layer clone or symmetrically copy and symmetrically paste it at the end. So what that's done is it's created a pleat. Now at the end we're going to merge all of this up, but right now I'm not going to merge it. The other thing I want to do at this point is I want to sew the top, because I want to sew this top down so this top isn't just kind of loose like this. We actually do need to get it sewn down, and you do want to sew it down at this point because it's much more difficult to sew these together later on. So the way I'm going to do that is just sew the top here to the top here, and you always want this to be a turned sewing line type, so be sure that's set to turned, and then sew from here to here and from here to here, and again turned. And then that sews everything down right on top. And the order is a little off. Because I adjusted all those pattern pieces and kind of pulled them out, the order gets a little off. Okay, there we go. Because it is important to have this kind of zigzag in the right direction. And if we do this correctly, it should automatically, you shouldn't have any problems up there. And that's one of the strengths of doing it this way, is that all of these like fold, the direction it folds is going to be correct all the way along the neck. Because if you just do a sewing, if you just kind of sew it and then let everything fly on, a lot of those, the directions of the folds are going to be just random rather than organized in one direction. Okay, so now we have our first pleat in place, and you'll notice that the bottom here, it's not looking correct. Don't worry about the bottom at all at this point. That will fix itself later, but for now, don't even worry about it. Now what I want to do is create another pleat, and since these pleats are overlapping on the top here, like this pleat folds over on top of this pleat here. Again, this can be a little tricky if you're just kind of doing this with one big pattern piece and trying to sew it to this, but because we're dividing it up into pieces, it's actually not a problem. Now, I said I'd merge these up later, but I'm actually going to merge this piece and this piece together, but only those two pieces. So I'm going to merge those together. So I've got one big piece here, and I'm not going to worry about this piece right now. We'll merge that up later. So let's move those over. And now let's create our next pleat shape. So I want it to start about right there. So I'm going to draw an internal line again, and we'll go out to, however, and again, this is going to be the shape of your pleat, so that's probably too much. So we'll just go out to there. And then, oh wait, okay, so this needs to be the inside edge. Okay. Right, so I want to create another inside edge, because when I'm doing this, I want an edge here, and then I want the outside edge here. So this piece here is going to be my inside edge, and then I'll draw another internal line here. And this will be my outside edge. And then this shape will be your pleat. So I'll take these two internal lines here. And again, I'll right click, extend, trim, and add point. Don't forget to add the points in to the pattern outline. And now I'll take all of these edges like this, I'll go up to my trace tool and I will trace as a pattern. So trace that as a pattern and then sew it on. So I'm going to sew these edges to these internal lines here. And I'm only doing that so I can superimpose over, and that will put my pattern piece in the correct position. Then I will layer clone over. So I go over and over. We'll remove the linked editing like this. Delete that, and delete that. And now we can cut this edge over here. So I'm going to cut this edge like that. And now I can sew everything the way it's supposed to be. So this top side to the bottom, this to this, and that to that. And now we'll go ahead and simulate. Okay, so that worked fine. Now, again, you do not want to forget to sew the top up here. So you sew like this from here to here, and from here to here. And you want it to just snap at that 0 so everything is even. And don't forget to set this to a turned sewing line type. So from here to here, from here to here, and set this to turned. And now we'll simulate. And now you see everything is right in the correct order. So you don't have any problems up here or up here, and everything is just behaving really nicely. So let's just go ahead and we'll do that one more time. So again, what I want to do is I do want to merge this piece and this piece together after I do it. And I'm not going to merge these two pieces yet. We'll do that at the end, and I'll talk about why when we do that. So you can just grab your sewing line right here, right click on there, and merge. And that's going to merge those pieces together. I'll simulate to make sure nothing has gone wrong and it looks fine. And now we'll create one more shape like this. And this will be the last pleat shape. Like that. And then again, we'll right click or click both of those internal lines there. We will extend, trim, and add point, to the pattern outline. And grab all of these. Grab our trace tool. Trace as a pattern, like that. We'll sew it up. And then superimpose over. Layer clone over. Remove the linked editing, delete the sewing, and we'll delete all the sewing here. And then I want to cut this piece over here, so we'll cut that. And then sew from here to here, here to here, and there to there. And then of course, don't forget to sew this top part. This is very important that you get this sewn down. And it's much easier to sew this stuff down at this stage rather than wait till the end and try and figure out how to sew these tiny little pieces up in here correctly. If you just do it in this methodical process, everything it's fairly simple and straightforward. So again, turned, always turned sewing. So that one's turned, and set that to turned. Now let's go ahead and simulate. And now we have these pleats in the front. And then we'll just go ahead and, okay, so I guess I don't really want all this extra out on the end, so I'll just cut it off. So we're just left with this. Now we can go ahead and merge everything. Now, the reason we didn't merge these before is because the direction that the fabric is facing is actually not correct when you do it this way. So if we turn on our single-sided surface, you can see that when you just layer the fabric on top of each other, the direction of these middle pieces is flipped. So what we have to do is we have to flip the normals, which basically means make the front go to the back and the back go to the front. So just click on all of those, go into your 3D window, and flip the normal. Now everything is oriented correctly. So don't forget to flip your normals on these front pieces. Now we can go ahead and merge. So starting from over here, just merge, 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 and merge. And then simulate to make sure everything works correctly. And we've created the pleats that we want in the front. So we've created the pleats. Okay, I've got the pleated shape. Now what I want to do is kind of refine the shape to its final form and add details and other things that are going to make it look really, really good. So what I want to do, first of all, is I actually want to add some internal lines. And there are going to be some internal lines you have, and I'm just going to delete those because those are not going to be helpful to us. But I do want to add internal lines where the folds kind of break. Now you're going to see a lot of these little blue lines. These are called baselines. Now normally I don't have much use for them and I usually delete them. They're basically like chalk outlines on top of a pattern piece, and they don't actually do anything functionally. They're reference lines basically. But in this case, they are a little bit useful. So it can be pretty difficult because you've added all these segment points. It can be difficult to figure out where on the 2D pattern you need to create your internal line so that it lines up correctly with the break, where the fold breaks. But if you know what you're looking for, it's pretty easy to find. So what you're looking for are these changes in angle right here, like right here, right here, right here, here, and here. So those are the places where the crease needs to happen. And you can see that there is one of these little blue baselines. And so you just use your internal line tool, follow that line, and connect it up with the segment on top. And that's going to be the correct line. So again, right here where there's this angle, the angle change, follow the baseline up. And again, you look for that angle change right there. And you follow it up. And you just go ahead and do that. And I'm going to use these internal lines as a way to control the fullness of the curves that are going to happen. So that's why I'm putting them in. So as long as you just find where this angle change happens and then follow the baseline to the correct segment point, you'll get these internal lines in the correct position. Okay, now we're done with that. So now what we can do is we can copy and symmetrically paste this over. So Control-C, Control-D, copy and symmetrically paste, and then just kind of get it in the right position so that it doesn't have to fly too far. Simulate that, and then sew up this front piece here. Okay, so we've got that, but when we look at this, the shape isn't quite right. And that's just because we need to adjust the shape out on this outer edge here. Now I want to adjust the outer edge shape, but I don't want to delete these internal lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock the internal lines, which you can do right up here. You can lock all the internal lines. So I'm just going to lock my internal lines so I don't even have to worry about them or changing the position of them. All I want to do is change this pattern outline. The other thing I can do is delete all these baselines. So I'm just going to right click in here and delete all the baselines because I'm done with those. Okay, now I can just go ahead and go in and delete most of these segment points out on the edge here. You don't want to delete all of them, obviously, but most of them. And then you can just either convert these to Bezier curves, or I like curve points, so I'm just going to convert all these outside things to curve points. And so when we look at the pattern again, our reference pattern, we can see that we're just creating an smooth outside shape like this, and that's going to adjust the shape of the bottom hem here. So if we go longer on the bottom like this, then you'll see you start to get this nice zigzag shape because it's this outside curvature that creates this kind of shape like this. And then again, we can go shorter up in here, and you can adjust this and kind of play with it until you get this shape that you want. So you get that nice neck ruffle. Now, the next thing we want to do, let me just change this to a more classic kind of red fabric real quick here. Like that. No, too red. Not that red. This red. Close. Okay. So now we've got this in the correct shape, but now what I want to do is really, take it to the next level, make it really look good. So there's a few things you want to do here. The first is you want to look at your collision thickness. And that's the little air bubble around your fabric pieces that helps the fabric from not colliding with itself. So you get this little buffer all the way around. Now by default, it's 2.5 millimeters. And that's that's usually fine for preview purposes. But when you specifically have pleats all stacked up like that, you've got 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, it adds up real quick. And so that's why these pleats don't lay very flat. It's because that buffer around all the pleats is at 2.5 and it's just stacking up. So I'm going to change this down to 1 for now, and you'll see that that helps flatten the pleats out. And then I'm also going to change my particle distance down to 5. Now this is obviously going to depend on your computer, but the lower you can get your particle distance when you're working on this, the smoother everything is going to lay and look. So you see, you turn your collision distance down and your particle distance down, and these will lay really nice and flat. Now the other thing that's going to matter is your fabric. And the fabric with something like this is going to matter a lot. Right now I'm just set to the default fabric. Now, we could go to something like a cotton canvas, and this will be a little bit stiffer and have a little bit more volume to it. It'll be a little bit heavier too. Now, if you go to something like a silk, well, there's various kinds of silks. Like a silk knit jersey is actually very heavy and very flimsy, so it's going to sag a lot more. Not Duchess satin, the silk knit jersey. So this is what silk knit jersey is going to do for you. Now other silks are very light and very volumetric, or I don't know. They create a lot of volume. So something like, I don't know. I actually don't know the differences between a lot of these. I think the silk chiffon, that one's going to be very lightweight. And it's going to give you this kind of look right here. But for now, I'm actually going to stick with something like this really lightweight muslin, or the lighter weight muslin, I think. So this is just kind of a standard cotton fabric. I'm going to show you how to use your internal lines to kind of adjust the way these fold and drape. So let's go ahead and unlock the pattern outlines now. And I'm just going to double click once and then double click again, and it's going to select all the internal lines within here. And then I'm just going to extend trim to pattern outline. I don't want to add a point to this as well. And again, it doesn't matter that they're all different lengths, as long as the angles are correct. All of these are going to be in the correct positions. And now what I want to do is I actually want to add extra internal lines, because I'm going to be applying fold angles. And when you apply a fold angle to one single internal line, it's just like a crease on a piece of paper. It's just like a fold in that one specific area. But if you add multiple internal lines very close together, it's going to amplify the effect of the bending. So more internal lines will amplify the amount that the fabric bends, if that makes sense. So to do that, I'm just going to, again, double click twice to select all these internal lines. And then I'm going to offset as pattern outline. Or where is that? Offset as internal line. I'm sorry, offset as internal line. Now I'm using the 6.1 beta, and it has this awesome feature. where you can extend from both sides at the same time, so you can offset both sides, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to offset twice at 2 millimeters, and 6.1 should be coming out soon, so everyone should have this feature pretty soon, but it's awesome. So now we have a bunch of internal lines like this. Now what I need to do is I just need to apply fold angles, and on this outside, on these outside internal lines, I need the fold angle to go down, so it pushes it down. And on the inside folds, that fold angle needs to go up, like to a higher number, so it folds it the other way. So I'll just, okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to lock all the pattern outlines now. So I'm going to lock all the pattern outlines, so I'm only selecting the internal lines. And locking pattern outlines and internal outlines is something that is really, really useful, and I highly recommend using it because it can save you a lot of time. So all I need to do is select I don't actually need to select the entire line. I just need to select the point of the line, and then I can apply a fold angle and it will apply to the entire line. So these are on the inside, so this fold angle needs to go up. And on the outside, these need to go down like that. Now when I simulate, you get these very powerful folds. Now obviously these are, all right, I thought something was wrong, but it's not. Anyway, as I was saying, when you have multiple internal lines close together like this, the amount of fold angle you need is actually quite a bit less than you think it is. So you don't want to overfold these. Anyway, now that you've created the folds in the correct places, and you don't actually, again, you don't need these internal lines, but they can help if you want a specific type of fold, a specific type of, like a very tight fold like this, or they can help you control the way it ruffles. But if you're happy just to let it drape naturally, that's fine too. So this is fine if you want these ruffles to be really tight all the way down, but what if you want them to just be kind of very tight at the top but looser at the bottom? And that's actually pretty simple to do as well. So let me just go ahead and unlock the pattern outline. All you need to do is you need to spread out these internal lines, and that's actually, there's a trick to that, to making it all even and work really nicely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this pattern piece, and I'm going to rotate, and I'm going to select y-axis. So it's going to rotate this this pattern piece parallel on the y-axis to whatever internal line or edge I click on. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to parallel one of these internal lines right here. So it's all of these internal lines are now parallel, or a parallel on the y-axis. Now all I need to do is go up here, and I'm just going to select all of these internal lines right down here, and I'm going to go into my transform point segment tool. So I'm going to just select the endpoints, transform point segment tool, and you'll get this dialog box, and then you just need to double click this pivot point in the middle, and then you can scale, and now these internal lines scale like that. So when these internal lines spread out like that, the fold angle, it kind of like, it's like a wave, and it kind of spreads out. And so the fold is going to be much tighter at the top and much less near the bottom. And so then you just want to go through and do that to all of your internal lines. Now I have that set up to a hotkey because this is something I use all the time, is rotating on or aligning things on the y-axis. And I'll just do that to all of these internal lines and spread them out like this. Again, rotate, and then double click that, spread it out. Not that much. Rotate, spread out, like that. So now all of these are spread really nice. And so when we simulate this now, you'll see that it kind of allows it to spread out at the bottom. but these internal lines help it fold very tightly up at the top. And again, if I wanted this to be a tighter, even tighter fold up at the top, I do the same thing. Near the top, I just rotate parallel to the y-axis with these, and I would grab all those. Oops. And then when we simulate, well, it didn't change too much here. And again, this is going to depend on the fabric's properties you have, but that will kind of allow you to control some of the way it drapes a little bit more with these internal lines like that. Oops. Okay. Let's see. Now what else do we need to do here? Oh, I'll just show you some quick variations that you can do with something like this. For example, if I wanted it to have like a kind of like a lettuce edge, I think is what they call it, I can just grab this edge here, and then I can go into my elastic, turn on the elastic, and then I don't want the simulation to be on when I do this. Let's let that go. Turn on the elastic and set my ratio up to like 125. So that means my elastic will push out this edge right here. So then you start to get this nice little ruffled edge. Now, there's not a lot of geometry on the edge to allow for a real detailed ruffle in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that edge again, and I'm going to turn on shirring, that little shirring button right there, and my interval at 2. That's basically my particle distance. So only on the edge, I want a particle distance of 2. And then, well, maybe that helped a little bit. And then I think I'll set this to like a silk, some kind of silk taffeta. What does that do? So you're fine. Well, I think that has more to do with the way it like actually moves around, because that's really kind of really very floaty. But that's just one of the ways you can adjust and play with this. And then again, if you need to continue to refine the shape, I would just lock the internal lines like this, and you can shorten that up if you want, and kind of add some more internal lines in here to help you create a different shape. And I'm going to switch this back over to like a cotton Oxford maybe. And then you can just create the shape that you want like this. And then once you have that, let's go back to, let's go ahead and put it, because we have a shirt, so let's go ahead and put it on the shirt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deactivate this. So I want this neck piece deactivated and this piece deactivated, and then we'll go over to this. We will unhide it and reactivate all of this. So the first thing I want to do is I want to turn this back on. Now I want to be sure my simulation is off, and I'm going to activate this part here. And then I'm going to, let's see, I think I'm just going to take this collar. So take my collar pieces, and I'm going to deactivate those collar pieces because I don't want to deal with the collisions right now. All I want to do is get this piece draped on top of my shirt. So now what I'll do is I'll layer this bow to layer 1, and I'll let that simulate. Actually, I'm gonna pull it out a little bit like this. Okay. So now that's on top like that. Now I'm going to turn my layers off. So I don't want this to be layered anymore. Now I'm going to activate my 2 pieces that are on the inside of the collar. So let's activate those. Oh, And let's just set these to layer 1 as well. So I'm gonna set those to layer 1. All right. Oh, and I guess we will set these to layer 1 as well. So all of this to layer 1. All right, that's fine. And then we'll set it back to layer 0 and set this to layer 0. So now I know everything is kind of sitting correctly on the shirt here. Now we can look at this collar, and I will activate that. And I want it to start off a little bit higher right here, so it just pushes everything down when I simulate. So, and I'm not even going to layer anything right now. I'm just going to let it go. And so there you have it. I do tend to spend a little extra time setting things up like that, just so I know everything is in the correct position. And so when I simulate, I don't have any collision issues, because setting things up correctly can be pretty important. And just like that, you've got a, well, maybe not just like that, but you do have this kind of like neck ruffly thing. And let's go ahead and do a quick render, see how it looks. So yeah. Let's go ahead and turn the elastic edge off. Don't really like that. Elastic edge off. Let's turn the shearing back, or shearing off. We'll simulate. This needs to be more like that. I want that to be shorter. Yeah. There we go. A much more traditional kind of thing. Oh, and then the last thing we can do that I almost always like to do is add a hem. So to add a hem, I would just offset as internal line by maybe like 8 millimeters there. Then right click, extend trim, and add point to the pattern outline. And then I'll just grab all of those two lines like that. Then I'll trace it. I'll sew it on, superimpose under, copy and symmetrically paste, superimpose under, and under. Is that under? There we go. Superimpose under, and then I'll add a couple internal lines on the edge here. I think I'll do it on the underside edge too. Distance 1, 2 there. And on this under piece, I'll turn the particle distance down to about 4. Collision thickness down to 1. And then that gives that just a little bit of extra thickness on the edge there. Give it that nicer, a little bit of a nicer look. Let's go ahead and render that. Okay. Maybe add a silk. And then this is just, you know, kind of fiddling around with it, having some fun, adding materials and textures to make it look really, really nice. So I think that looks okay. Anyway, that's how you make this, but in a larger sense. That's how you want to think about pleating, not just in this specific case, but anytime you see pleating on a garment, if you just think of it as 3 layers of fabric stacked on top of each other, you can generally recreate it fairly easily by making the shape of the internal lines with the internal lines, stacking it, and then merging it to create a pleat. because really that's all a pleat is. So yeah. And then again, let's just go back to this pattern here and compare. So at the beginning I said, what you want to think of is, you don't want to think of this pattern as creating this shape. You want to think of this shape creating this pattern. And we can see here that this shape, we started out with this shape, and this shape is specifically creating this pattern. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but anyway, yeah, that's it. So until next time, I hope this was okay. This was a little rambly, but till next time, bye.